Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you like this video. It's the final bookmark in the series of bookmarks that I created for my friend for his Reddit gift exchange. For this bookmark, I wanted to go with another galaxy theme, but instead of doing lots of different shades of color in the background behind the black, I wanted it to be more of a purpley glow coming through, so I used purples and pinks in the background. The colors that I used were Sponge Sugar, Shaded Lilac, Seedless Preserves, Dusty Concord, and a little bit of Hickory Smoke. I've mentioned in the past that a lot of my distress ink is drying out, so the best way I find to get the color on the paper is to just smush the ink pad directly on there and then blend it out. Don't let my drying ink pads scare you away from buying this though. When I moved, I packed these very poorly and all the tops fell off of my distress ink, and I think that is why a lot of them have dried out quite a bit. I'll probably just end up having to replace a lot of them, which they aren't that expensive, so it's not that difficult. After I laid all the purples down, I sprinkled some water from my hand onto the paper and let that pull up the color a little bit for the bleaching effect, and just used a paper towel to sop up the water. And then after that I used my black ink pad and went around the edges, but I found that that wasn't dark enough, so I came in with an acrylic black paint and just blended that with a new blender. I kept adding more and more color, more black, more purple, and until I liked the look of it, and then I came in again with some more water for bleaching. With galaxies, I've said this in the past, it's a lot of layering and a lot of blending, and it will look weird while you're doing it, but just keep going with it because in the end it'll turn out really nice. I pulled out this Reeves white watercolor paint and put it on my black and added some water to it, and then I'm just going to flick it off the side of the block with a paintbrush to create my stars. Before you start your splattering, you just kind of want to run that brush along the edge to get any excess paint off of your brush so you don't get really big droplets on your paper. To get some really fine drops, I then put it on my finger and kind of like fanned the brush out and let some really small splatters hit the paper. I think it was looking really good at this point, and I could have stopped right here and called it a day, but I decided to go even further with this. So I took a paper towel and I sopped up some of that white to kind of make it look cloudy. Because if you ever look at like a galaxy painting or picture, you'll see like a cloudy haze in some areas. So that's what I was going for with this. So after I sopped up that color, I went back in with my purples and blacks and did some more layers. So in the end, when this is all done, you'll kind of see those white splatters that I did here through the colors that I add now, and it just adds a lot to it, I think. I pulled my black acrylic paint back out to do some more blending with that. That's just a very cheap children's acrylic paint that I got from probably Walmart, but it works, you know. Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't even think it is an acrylic paint. I think it's just a children's washable paint. So yeah, that just shows you don't really need the expensive fancy paints to do things like this. I took out some more of my watercolor white paint and I'm putting it on that black to flick off the edge again. And this is going to be my final layer. Making these galaxies is very enjoyable. I find it very relaxing to just sit and paint and play around and see what happens. It can seem like a very difficult thing. I know that when I first saw somebody do this technique, I thought there's no way I could do that. I encourage you to just try because you could be surprised by what happens. Ugh, I love pulling off that tape. It just makes me so happy. I feel bad when I cut this down because it looks so nice and crisp with the edges like that, but like I'm not looking for that for this project, so I have to cut the edges off, but it does hurt a little bit. When I finish one of these, part of me just wants to put it in a frame and put it by my craft desk. Maybe paint some big saying across it in like a silver paint, like dream big or something like that. Anyways, moving on. I cut this piece in half and I put one away. I'll probably use it on a card in the future. I don't want to waste it because I worked so hard on it. But this other half is going to be for the bookmark. I cut it down a little thinner on that one edge. I wanted to keep the middle part with the intense purple area as much as possible, but I did want this to be a thinner bookmark, so I cut that edge off. I pulled out my circle dies and I picked a circle that would fit around this sentiment that I chose. And next I'm going to stamp this sentiment on some black cardstock. I'm going to heat emboss it. So I prepped the paper with my powder tool, and the first time I stamped it wrong, so I just went over to the other side of the paper and I stamped it with my Versamark ink, and then I'm using this silver embossing powder. And I'm just going to heat set that with my heat tool. This little circle sentiment says Soar on it, and it has a bunch of little stars. Thought it went well with this galaxy background. Now I'm just going to cut it out with my die using my Big Shot. After I cut this and then I placed it on the bookmark to see what it would look like, I realized I wanted it to have like a border around it to make it stand out a little more. So I took out this piece of vellum paper and the next size up circle die, pulled my Big Shot back out, and cut another circle for this sentiment to go on. The one thing that you want to keep in mind with vellum paper is that it is see-through. So if you plan on adhering it to something, you need to plan out how you're going to be gluing it so that you don't see the adhesive through the paper. It was pretty easy in this circumstance because I do have that circle sentiment on it, and I can just hide my tape right behind that circle. And I did pop it up with some foam tape because I wanted to give it a little bit of dimension. All of the bookmarks in this series that I did for my friend are shakers, and this one is going to be a shaker as well. So I pulled out my little dish and my little spoon and all my sequins and started making my mix. You could take these sequins and pour them directly into your bookmark after you've made the pocket, and it would be easier to just take that spoon and pour it directly in there, but then you can't see what the sequins are all going to look like together, and I just find making it in the dish first is what I like to do better. Right here you'll see that I glued this onto a piece of white paper to give it a white border, but eventually you'll see that I change this. I don't know if you'll be able to tell this from the video, but when I glued it on there, it's not completely straight, it's slightly askew, and I'm a little OCD, so this really bugged me. And here I'm just taking my Wink of Stella brush and going across the entire galaxy area to make it all sparkle. And this is where I could not get over the fact that it wasn't straight. So I ended up cutting that border completely off, which is fine. It doesn't need a border, and the paper gives it some extra stability. And also I wanted it to be a thinner bookmark anyways, so it worked out. I ended up leaving a very, very thin border, so it still pops a little bit. Now I'm going to get ready to make my shaker. So I already fused that one edge there, and I'm sticking the bookmark in and trying to make sure that it's straight so that I can fuse the other edge to make my pocket. This fuse tool is very hot right now. It's been heating up for about 20 minutes at this point, So keep those fingers away from it. Now that I have my pocket made, I'm going to put my sequins in it, and probably gonna do most of this off camera. This part always turns out to be off camera a bit. So I rolled up a little piece of paper, just a scrap piece of paper, to funnel everything in there, and I scooped it all and put it in there. If you do it this way, you're gonna wanna really tap that piece of paper, just kind of flick it after you're done to get all of the sequins out of all of the folds of that paper. I've pulled the paper out before without tapping it and had sequins just fall everywhere. And next I'm just gonna close that up with my fuse tool so that all the sequins don't fall out. And then I'm gonna make another fuse right there, and that's so that I can make my little hole punch and not have sequins fall out of my hole punch. Because if you don't do both fuses and you just do the top one and then you hole punch it, you could have sequins come out of that hole. If you have one of those tools that makes eyelets, then you could use that tool and then you'd only have to do the top fuse. And none of the sequins would fall out. But I don't have one of those tools, so this is an option for people that don't have that tool. I'm really running out of things to talk about during these bookmarks. I've been doing so many of them lately, it gets kind of repetitive. I will be moving on soon to doing mostly cards, which I know it's hard to tell from my YouTube channel because it's just started and I've mostly done these bookmarks, but I mostly make cards. It's just been a lot of bookmarks lately because I just got the fuse tool and this is a fun way to use it. And I've had friends ask for bookmarks, so lots of bookmarks lately. I am looking forward to finding some interesting ways to incorporate the fuse tool on cards in the future. I love making shaker cards, and in the past I've always done it in, a way where I use a piece of acetate and glue it on, and this is going to be a whole new way to try and make a shaker card. Anyways, I'm just finishing up the bookmark here, tying that tassel on and cutting off the edge, and then this bookmark is going to be done. I like to give it a good shake at the end to make sure all the sequins are moving, and just because it's fun. Thank you for watching.